So with a band like Avenged Sevenfold, arguably people can say is the biggest metal band to have existed ever since about the time of City of Evil coming out back in 2005. But we're not talking about that album. But just for this series, I actually want to start off because we're talking about their very first album, Sounding the Seventh Trumpet. For those out there who don't know Avenged Sevenfold, a little history lesson for everybody out there. Avenged Sevenfold started out at the very ending stages of the 1990s, and 1999 to be exact. And their early material was more of a metalcore sound, which is a subdivision of hardcore punk and heavy metal mixed together. So, with Avenged Sevenfold's earliest output with an album such as Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, we got to examine this album because this album is an important part of the history of the band because it's their very first album when they signed to Good Life Records in 2000. They got a deal to make their first ever album. And with this album, it's definitely a metalcore-centered album, which at the time, metalcore was just beginning to pick up legs, you know, with bands such as Killswitch Engage and Shadows Fall coming about. And other bands within that style, like Dillinger Escape Plan and Converge, were all starting to become very good around this time. So when Avenged Sevenfold came out, they came out at the same time of bands like Atreyu and Bleeding Through out of that southern Huntington Beach, California metalcore scene, where Avenged Sevenfold pretty much took a little bit more of a hardcore punk influence into this album with certain tempos. But the bookend tracks to end the Rapture, the first track, only a minute and a half, and it just had this beautiful guitar playing of Sinister Gates, which was the only song on this album that he performed on. The rest of the guitars was done by Zachy Vengeance. That was a great introductionary track, if I can create a word, to kick off this album. And then the bookend is the last song of the album, Shattered by Broken Dreams. Definitely had to start off with a more softer edge, and then it gets into the heavy, brutal parts. But we gotta also talk about tracks such as, you know, Darkness Surrounding and The Art of Subconscious Illusion, We Come Out at Night, and Breaking Their Hold in Streets. Those are particular tracks that have a very huge influence on hardcore punk and thrash metal styles. For them to incorporate those styles into those tracks made for a very aggressive, very brutal songs for this album with the speed, but also some of the riffs were very, very well written by Zachy Vengeance. Like, my favorite riff of this album, I would say, was that introduction riff to Art of Subconscious Illusion, that it just had a very good catchiness to it that I really, really enjoyed. But the production on this album was sort of a little rough around the edges. They were experimenting a lot at this time, but then again, it's their first album in 2001, in the very beginning of 2001 to be exact. So, yeah, Avenged Sevenfold was definitely trying to show what potential they could have. So, but yeah, and also even on the song Art of Subconscious Illusion, M. Shadows' wife actually does some vocals, and it's very distinctive with that really, like, Satan demon girly voice that she has when she does her growl or scream or what have you. But yeah, also, but some of the other songs on here kind of feel a little bit kind of rushed and not really thought out too well. But it doesn't mean they're terrible songs. They were just songs that definitely showcased their potential and showed that they have a lot to offer. So for the reason why this review was short was because the fact that pretty much this album, it definitely showed what Avenged Sevenfold was capable of with fast-paced songs, but it was sort of really just the building block. This is a good building block album for this band because eventually after this album, they would start to diversify their sound and start to gradually move away from that metalcore tag and going into just straightforward heavy metal. But with this album, it's not a bad album. It's actually a decent album. There are some highlights on here, like In the Rapture, Darkness Surrounding, Artist of Conscious Illusion. I really like We Come Out Night. And Warmness on the Soul is another song that sort of was the heralding cry for what Avenged Sevenfold was going to become later on in their careers, with clean vocals and even some softer subject matter and softer guitar sounds and more thought put into the song structure. That song was definitely a heralding cry to what the band was eventually going to become. But like I said with this album, the production's decent for what it is, for an independent label like Good Life Recordings at the time. It was definitely a good building block album for them, but this is definitely the weakest album of their career. But to say it's a terrible album, not really. It's just more so average or decent. But like I said, there are some highlights on here that people would enjoy. But 2 years would go by, and Avenged Sevenfold would go through a lineup change. And when we get to that album, we'll see how that change either did it benefit them for better or worse. Stay tuned.